Hi techies, today we'll talk about another AWS Cloud Practitioner sample question. So let's get into it. A customer needs to determine total cost of ownership (TCO) for a workload that requires physical isolation. Which hosting model should be used? Now I'm going to run through each of these options and explain everything, but you can try and guess at the answer while my intro is playing. The first one I'll talk about is an on-demand instance. With on-demand instances, you pay for compute capacity by the second with a minimum of 60 seconds with no long-term commitments. You have the following features: no long-term commitment, complete control over the lifespan of the instance. That is, you can choose when to stop, launch, hibernate, reboot, or terminate it, and the price is fixed. It should be used for short-term irregular workloads that shouldn't be interrupted. Now let's move on to the next instance. A spot instance is an instance that uses spare EC2 capacity that is available for less than the on-demand price. Note the use of the word spare. In on demand, when you request for it, you get it. But here, after requesting for it, you can only get it when the capacity is available. And even after you've gotten it, Amazon can easily terminate, stop, or hibernate your instance depending on what you specified when creating the spot request if the demand of the instance of that capacity is high. It's like having two pens and giving one out where you're not using it. If something happens to your present pen, you can always collect the pen back from who you lent it to. Likewise, they can always collect the instance back. The spot price, which is the hourly price for the spot instance, is not fixed and varies based on demand. Now, let's look at the best use cases for this type of instance. If you can be flexible with when your application runs and if your application may be interrupted, spot instances are a cost effective option. Spot instances are ideal for dealing with data analysis, batch jobs, background processing, and optional tasks. Let's move on to reserved instances. Reserved instances are not physical instances, but rather a billing discount applied to the use of an on demand instance in your account. It's like booking an event center for a year. While you may not be using the event center for 24 hours in a day, you will still be charged for it. Similarly, in reserved instance, you will be charged a low hourly usage fee whether you have an instance running or not, and a reserved instance rate for when you do have your instance running. So why use a reserved instance if you'll be charged even when you're not using it? It is because the discounts are crazy. It can even go as low as 72% of the price of an on demand instance. That is, if you were to pay $100 for an instance, with reserved instance, you will be paying $28. You'll be making a commitment to a consistent instance configuration, including instance type and region. So when you reserve an instance, you specify the configuration for that instance. For example, you reserve two T2 micro instances, but you have running a T3 micro instance and one T2 micro instance. That T2 micro instance will be charged the reserved price rate. You can purchase a reserved instance for a 1 year or 3 year commitment, with the 3 year commitment offering a bigger discount. When a reserved instance expires, you can continue using the EC2 instance without interruption, but you will be charged on demand instances rates. And reserved instances do not automatically renew. Neither can you get a refund once you've paid for it. You can either alter, swap, or sell your reserved instance. The reserved instance is ideal for steady and predictable usage. Now let's head on to the last option, dedicated host. This refers to physical servers or hardware that are reserved or allocated exclusively for a specific customer or organization within Amazon. To fully understand this, you need to understand what shared tenancy is. Shared tenancy refers to a situation in which multiple entities, typically different customers or organizations, share the same physical computing resources within a hosting environment. That is, your virtual machine can be on the same physical hardware with someone else's virtual machine, and you all will be sharing the resource of the host machine. In dedicated hosts, you are paying for the entire physical host machine rather than sharing it with other customers. Hence, your server is isolated. One significant benefit of dedicated servers is their optimum security. Since it's not shared, the security of your dedicated server is entirely in your hands, from controlling the operating system to all its applications. Also, you won't be sharing resources with other users, hence, you will have higher processing power and speed, leading to increased reliability and performance. If you have purchased software licenses previously that are based on a number of CPU sockets, CPU cores, or virtual machines, you can use these licenses on the dedicated hosts without having to purchase additional licenses. This is cost effective because you are utilizing your existing software investments. You also have your static IP address with your dedicated host since it is your own dedicated server. And then it is similar to dedicated instance, but it is not the same thing. I'll leave the link in the description below for a full description of all these services and their differences. Okay, so let's look at the best use cases for dedicated hosts. Firstly, it is ideal when you have strict security and compliance regulations to adhere to. When you're also dealing with sensitive or confidential data, for example, financial records or health records, you should use a dedicated host. So let's go back to the question. A customer needs to determine total cost of ownership for a workload that requires physical isolation. Which hosting model should be used? And let me give you some time to think about it. Just pause and then try and see if you can answer it correctly. If it gets dedicated host, then you're correct because it requires physical isolation and dedicated host is the only option among here that can give us that physical isolation that we want. Thank you for watching this video. If you did like it, please like and subscribe. And if you didn't, you better like it.